Yo, Kpaceguy here. Hey, we're going to talk about 5 tips to stop falling for in home theater. There's tons of advice, tons of help, tons of aids out there to help you in this whole home theater audio tech world, right? But you can't believe everything you see, and we're going to talk about 5 common things that I see a lot of people fall for that we're done with right now in this video. Let's get right into it. Home theater trick number 1 to stop falling for is projector lumens. When you're looking for projectors, when you're looking up what projector is right for you, you're gonna see lumens, the brightness of light. We measure brightness of light in lumens, and for projectors, the bigger the lumen number is, the brighter that picture is going to be on your screen. So typically you want to try to find the brightest projector that you can, or the most lumens, to make sure that you can see that screen in the daytime. That is really what lumens is all about. The brighter the lumens, the brighter the picture. Now, there are some tricks that manufacturers play on us to make us fall for it. If you go to Amazon right now, this is a huge culprit. Amazon has a ton of projectors, $100, $99, $299, even $399, right? There's some really appealing budget projectors that boast 5,000 lumens, 4,000 lumens, 7,000, 2,800, but you're never gonna get that, right? That is a rating probably from a certain distance. It's a rating at the peak brightness. So if you turn up your brightness and your contrast and you jack all these settings all the way up to max, yeah, you might get that projector lumen output. Maybe in HDR mode, that's your brightest output. But these manufacturers are boasting no 5, 6, 7,000 lumens. You're not getting that. That's bright. Some of the best projectors don't even get past 3,000 lumens. I have a super bright Samsung LSP9T ultra short throw projector in my home theater, and it is really bright to the point where I've actually backed the backlight down. It's only rated to about 2,800 lumens or so. So these budget projectors that are priced at $200, boasting 7,000 lumens, you're not getting that. Don't let that fool you. Usually the budget projectors don't get very bright at all. So make sure when you're looking for projectors, don't fall for the lumens. Go a little bit further in the spec sheet and find their true spec. Don't just take what you see and run with it. Don't judge a book by its cover. Do some research. Make sure that that manufacturer is telling you the truth when it comes to those lumens. Another trick that you're gonna see that you need to stop falling for is receiver power. The rating that manufacturers give their receivers. This is an old tale, but you've probably seen this before, where you get a receiver and it says 180 watts, 150 watts. You're thinking, my goodness, why do I even need an external amplifier if my receiver can give me 150 watts? Well, it's not going to. Receivers, most manufacturers are giving you a rating at 2 channels. So if you have, say, a 7-channel receiver and it says 150 watt with 2 channels driven, it means that it can only give you 150 watts with only 2 speakers in use, right? 2 channels in use. So if you plan to use a receiver all 7 speakers all the time, you will never see 150 watts to each individual speaker. The more speakers you have, the less wattage you're gonna get to that channel. So the fewer speakers you have, the more power it has to give to those speakers. So ratings are about 2 channels driven. Also, be careful because a lot of receivers nowadays have ohm ratings, 4 ohms, 6 ohms, 8 ohms. This is what we call impedance. Those higher wattage numbers may not be at 8 ohms like your speakers are rated to. It may be a 4 ohm rating, which is great, but if you have 8 ohm speakers, you can't get the 150 watts at 4 ohms because your speakers are 8, not 4. If you don't know what impedance or ohms is, I do have a video going in very detail about it, so check the description down below. A good way to tell if your receiver is actually making good power is if you flip it to the back towards where you plug in the outlet, whether it's removable or it's fixed, they usually have an output rating, how much watts the receiver will take out of the wall at a time. It'll tell you 450 watts, 500 watts. So if you do the math, and you have a 7-channel receiver and you look on the back and it says at most it'll take 500 watts out of the wall, well, you can probably divide the number of channels by 500 and boom, now you probably have a good idea of what your amps are really rated at. That's a skewed number, not completely accurate, but You get the idea. If your receiver will only pull 500 watts at a given time, there's no way that it has 150 watts times 7. It's just, there's not enough power. So just be careful when you're looking at receivers and you're doing some shopping this year. Make sure that you don't let wattage fully be the reason why you buy something, because most manufacturers are lying to you. Another thing that will trick you that's kind of related to receiver power or amplifier power is subwoofer or speaker frequency response. A lot of times when you look at a speaker, maybe you can't go and hear it, so you're relying on reviews or the manufacturer's spec sheet. You may be looking at frequency response. I know me, when I buy subwoofers or I buy speakers, I want to know how low they can dig, how deep can they play. A lot of tricks happen whenever you look at frequency response if you're not careful. Let's say you have a tower speaker rated 35 hertz up to 20 kilohertz. Sounds good. Can almost do the full range. That's great, right? Well, that 35 hertz rating may be plus or minus 6 dB or plus or minus 12 dB, right? It really just depends on the room it's in, right? Things like that. So even though it says that it can play down to 35 hertz, it may be almost inaudible, unusable bass. Same thing with a subwoofer. It may be rated down to 25 hertz. Yeah, it might play 25 hertz, but it might barely do it. It might not even be heard. Or maybe that's the response that the manufacturer got down at the factory, but when you bring it home, totally different, right? But there's a vice versa to this. Some subwoofers play deeper than they're rated, or speakers play deeper than they're rated because of the in-room response. When you're looking at spec sheets, you're going to see frequency response, and then you may see in-room response. And you may see that the in-room response is a lot better than the regular response, the frequency response. Reason being is because our rooms play with the sound. So maybe you're looking at a subwoofer that only plays to 22 hertz. Maybe take a little bit more of a look. It may say 16 hertz in-room response. There you go, that's great. Maybe you're looking for a subwoofer that digs down to 16. It may do that in your room. So make sure you just read the specs all the way through. Don't just skim through them. Actually go through and see what they're telling you, because you can be tricked by not looking far enough. Make sure you're checking in-room response. Make sure you're checking if it's plus or minus a certain amount of dBs. Be careful with that kind of thing, because that tricked in the end. So this may not be a trick, but maybe it's more of a misconception, but we'll call it a trick. The trick is to thinking that calibration fixes everything. I'm going to go out and say that pretty much every receiver that you can buy nowadays has some sort of built-in calibration where you put the microphone in your seating position, you run a frequency sweep, it calibrates it, it tells you to move it to another position, calibrates it, and the goal is to get all of your listening positions and everything around it to sound as good as possible. A lot of people will run calibration, let it do its thing, put the mic up, and never touch the settings again. This is not necessarily, again, a trick, but more of a misconception that Anthem or Odyssey or Dirac Live, these things like this are just magical, that they can just take anything that's bad and make it good. That's not the case. These auto calibrations do their best with the tools that they have to make your system sound better. But it's not going to fix everything. It's going to get things wrong. And it should be practice for you, good practice for you to go back behind your calibration and make some changes. One of the biggest things that I see calibration get wrong is setting your speakers to large when they should be small. You want to set them to small for two reasons. One, because most every speaker you buy cannot fully and safely play a full range system, a full range of frequencies. So if you have it set to large, you're telling the receiver to blast it with every bit of frequency it can handle. Not all speakers can do that. It can be dangerous at high volumes. So that's one reason why you don't want to set it to large. You also don't want to set it to large because you can't select a crossover anymore. So if you want to set a crossover on your speakers, you have to set them to small. That way that you can set a crossover, 60 hertz, 40 hertz, whatever you want to do. Receivers nowadays, even some of the good ones, still set speakers to large because maybe the room response says that it's a big speaker, or maybe you have it in a corner so it's making the microphone think it's bigger than it is. Things like that. So you want to go behind your receiver and just make the necessary changes, things that it didn't get right. Distances, for example, making sure that it set your distance from you to that speaker correctly, or making sure that it set the phase right for your subwoofers, or the volume level for your speakers may be slightly off. You want to go back behind and check this. Don't just run calibration and think, all right, we're good. A lot of times that's not the case. So don't fall for the trick of thinking auto calibration is the end all be all. All right, there's tons more tricks out there, but I'll end it with this one here, a very controversial one, but the trick is to thinking that expensive cables give you the best sound. I'm gonna have a lot of people in the comments, if you watched the video this far, say, I bought $1,000 cables and my system just completely changed. I'm gonna have some people say, yeah, I bought Walmart RCAs for $9. Beautiful, does great, no ground noise, nothing. And that's true. I believe the guy who bought $1,000 worth of cables, that they're good. And I believe the guy who ran to Walmart to grab some speaker wire thinks they're good. I believe that. But don't think that you have to have expensive cables to get the best sound out of your system. It's not the case. I guarantee you there's a very small population of people where I could blindfold you and have you sit down in a room, and I'm gonna play one speaker with a $1,000 cable, and I'm gonna play the same speaker with a $20 cable. You probably, most likely, cannot tell which speaker has the $1,000 cable and which one doesn't. And because you can't really tell, or it's not a distinctive difference, it's not worth it in my personal opinion. I'm going to continue to get $30, $40 speaker cables, maybe $20, $30 RCAs, maybe $25, $30 XLR cables. Things that are made of good quality, but not ridiculously expensive. Now, expensive is different to everybody. For me, the number that I mentioned, 25, 50, whatever, that's where I stop when it comes to cables. But for somebody who's a millionaire who has 3 Ferraris outside the house already may think that $1,000 cables is nothing to them. And that's fine. Get what you like. But for me personally, I think it's diminishing returns very quickly when you start spending a lot of money on cables. HDMIs, RCAs, XLRs, speaker cables. I don't think you have to. If you do, let me know how it's worked out for you. I would love to be able to get an expensive cable and an inexpensive cable and A/B test them in the video. Maybe one day I will, but until then, I think that it's a trick to make you just spend a lot of money. So with that being said, guys, leave me a comment down below. Let me know some more tricks that you've fallen for in the past that you don't know more. Let us know that down below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you're not already, and we will see you in the next video. Kpaceguy out. Peace.